Now, as we spoke before about Project Stargate, it was a CIA-based project that was set up to use remote viewing and test and explore that area of understanding. And that as a part of that project, we had Hal Puthoff and Ingo Swann. And these two saw Scientology as a valid way to develop these paranormal abilities, these psychic abilities that could be used to contact these entities or to do remote viewing. And I just found that interesting because as I've studied recently and kept on the cutting edge of these ufology things that are going on right now, these different whistleblowers that are coming out and saying all these things, I keep running across the common thread of the idea of Scientology, Christian Scientology religion, being somewhat behind or involved in a lot of this type of disclosure. So I just found that interesting because if you study the roots of Scientology, you realize that it goes back to another religion, and it goes back there through L. Ron Hubbard. Because if you know much about L. Ron Hubbard, he was friends with and practiced rituals with, sex magic rituals with Aleister Crowley. So L. Ron Hubbard was very aware of and practiced the religion of Thelema that Aleister Crowley, who called himself the Beast, had created. And in my studies, I have studied not only the religion of Thelema of Aleister Crowley, but other cults and religions that came out of the same area where Crowley's religion started, both in England and in Western America, specifically in the area surrounding Los Angeles and Hollywood. And what I've found is that that religion of Thelema seemed to be the religion behind a lot of the people we've already talked about. Some of these very wealthy and very elite groups of people, like the Clintons, like Jack Parsons. He was involved with L. Ron Hubbard and with Aleister Crowley. Then science fiction writers that also were involved with this same group of people, like Arthur C. Clarke and Isaac Asimov. And some of these guys, like Hubbard and Parsons and Crowley, all stayed in the parsonage, which was a home near Los Angeles in Pasadena, California. And they lived together while they were practicing their religion of Thelema. They even performed the Babylon working ritual at that location in Pasadena, California. Not only that, but Hubbard, along with some of these other guys, specifically some of these science fiction writers, started the Los Angeles Science Fantasy Society, Incorporated. And this was established in 1934. Ron Hubbard and Jack Parsons worked with these other science fiction writers like Bradbury, Asimov, and Arthur C. Clarke in writing their sci-fi alien-based fiction novels. And of course, you know that a lot of this information, a lot of the ideas came from the ritualistic practices of Crowley, Parsons, and Hubbard. And then what do we see? Then we see that over the years, of course, starting with Jack Parsons and the Jet Propulsion Laboratories, JPL, or Jack Parsons Laboratories, which then became NASA. It became the foundation of our entire governmental administration of reaching space, of anything to do with space, outer space. It was all controlled by an organization that was set up by these guys. They were black magic ritualists, and that was the foundation of all of our knowledge of space and rocketry and science in this country and around the world. So you can imagine how they would quickly control the narrative to suit their own interests. And as time went on, the space age morphed and NASA became a little less influential. And then there was this rise of these other influential tech moguls who got into the space race, so to speak, around the time of the Obama administration in 2008. People like Elon Musk with SpaceX, and Jeff Bezos with Blue Origin from Amazon, and also Richard Branson with his space organization Virgin Galactic. And we do have to wonder, did the same kind of ritualistic magic practice come with these guys into this new age of space exploration? We do know at least about Richard Branson that he was involved not only with the Nexium cult that was run and founded by Keith Raniere, but he was also found to have had very young girls on his island in the Caribbean. And as far as we understand, may have also been involved with the Jeffrey Epstein scandals. And it's interesting when we consider that Branson was part of the Nexium cult, that many people see the Nexium cult and they look at its structure and the way it was run, and they see in that the same thing that we see in Scientology. The same structure, the same organization, the same way of controlling its membership. But just realize that all these cults and magic and practices and rituals came out of the same area of the country from the same people. Parsons, Crowley, L. Ron Hubbard, the Los Angeles area. It was all there. And so we have to wonder if what we're looking at and what is part of this race to control disclosure has something to do with these cults, these black magic ritualists, maybe embedded in Scientology, maybe embedded in Thelema itself. If we take a deep dive into Scientology, we start to see some things specifically about L. Ron Hubbard that bring us pause. There is a document that came out of Scientology, and it actually is a document that describes one of the highest levels of achievement in Scientology, called OT8, or Operating Thetan Level 8. And this document, at first being fully embraced by Scientology, has since been, again, rejected officially by the group. While still many of its members and practitioners say that no, this is actually a legitimate document and is definitely an original document by L. Ron Hubbard. But this document was supposedly produced in the 1980s by the Scientologists, and it claims to have been written by Hubbard himself, and it states this: with the exception of original Buddhism, virtually all religions of any consequence on this planet, mono and pantheistic alike, have been instruments to speed the progress of this evolution of consciousness and bring about the virtual enslavement of mankind. As you know, Siddhartha Gautama never claimed to be anything more than a man. Having caught on to this operation, he postulated his own return as Mateya, part of which prophecy will have been fulfilled upon the passing of L. Ron Hubbard. If this claim were not remarkable enough, the same text also appears to identify Hubbard with the figures of Lucifer and the Antichrist. Hubbard's mission in this world, the text claims, was actually to derail or prevent Jesus' second coming, described in the book of Revelation in the New Testament. The OT8 Series 1 text in the Fishman Affidavit also connects the narrative of the second coming of Jesus with aspects of Hubbard's space opera cosmology, such as an ancient civilization called the Galactic Confederacy, and another more sinister alien civilization called the Markabians, with which Jesus is said to be aligned. No doubt you are familiar with the Revelation section of the Bible, where various events are predicted. Also mentioned is a brief period of time in which the arch enemy of Christ, referred to as the Antichrist, will reign, and his opinions will have sway. This Antichrist represents the forces of Lucifer, literally the light bearer. Lucifer being a mythical representation of the forces of enlightenment, the Galactic Confederacy. My mission could be said to fulfill the biblical promise represented by this brief Antichrist period. During this period, there is a fleeting opportunity for the whole scenario to be effectively derailed, which would make it impossible for the mass Markabian landing, or second coming, to take place. The second coming is designed, among other things, to trigger a rapid series of destructive events. I will return not as a religious leader, but a political one, That happens to be the requisite beingness for the task at hand. I will not be known to most of you, my activities misunderstood by many. So there you have it, the secret that I have kept close to my chest all these years. So in this document of one of the highest levels of Scientology, L. Ron Hubbard himself admits that he sees himself as the incarnation of Lucifer and the Antichrist, and that he would return at some point after his death to fulfill what's talked about in the scriptures as the time of Antichrist, in an effort to stop the final coming of the Lord Jesus Christ. Now, if you think that that might be just an anomaly, like maybe this really isn't truly a writing by L. Ron Hubbard, then you also have to explain away an interview that Ron Hubbard's son, L. Ron Hubbard Jr., also known as Ron DeWolf, had with Penthouse magazine. This interview was done with Penthouse magazine in 1983. Penthouse asks, "What exactly is Scientology?" Hubbard answers, "Scientology is a power and money and intelligence gathering game." Seems like a strange response, that it's just a game. Hubbard Jr. also says this, "Also, I've got to complete this by saying that he, L. Ron Hubbard, my father, thought of himself as the Beast 666 incarnate." Penthouse asks him, "The devil?" Hubbard Jr. says, "Yes, the Antichrist. Aleister Crowley thought of himself as such, and when Crowley died in 1947, my father then decided that he should wear the cloak of the beast and become the most powerful being in the universe." Penthouse says, "You were 16 years old at that time. What did you believe in?" And Hubbard Jr. answers, "I believed in Satanism. There was no other religion in the house. Scientology and black magic." What a lot of people don't realize is that Scientology is black magic that is just spread out over a long time period. To perform black magic generally takes a few hours or at most a few weeks. But in Scientology, it's stretched out over a lifetime, and so you don't see it. Black magic is the inner core of Scientology, and it is probably the only part of Scientology that really works. Also, you've got to realize that my father did not worship Satan. He thought he was Satan. He was one with Satan. He had a direct pipeline of communication and power with him. My father wouldn't have worshipped anything. I mean, when you think you're the most powerful being in the universe, you have no respect for anything, let alone worship. So as I heard this interview, I was struck by the amazing candor with which Ron Hubbard Jr. talks about his father openly participating in black magic and essentially uniting himself with Satan to become Satan himself, and then expecting himself to somehow reincarnate in the future in the form of Satan. And then, of course, Hubbard died in 1986, so it made me wonder, did he pass the mantle of Satan to someone else before he died? Or was he simply thinking he would reincarnate? Or that Satan himself would simply just come back as the Antichrist? So learning all of this connection between the UFO community, the disclosure community, some of these elitists who get involved in disclosure, like the Clintons, John Podesta, Robert Bigelow, Lawrence Rockefeller, that I felt the connections were so strong, and that this seems to be part of what is causing disclosure to not happen correctly, is that these people, L. Ron Hubbard, for instance, was involved in the Office of Naval Intelligence as well. There's so many connections in government and in military and in politics that I can see now why this disclosure that people want will never happen. And some of the things that are being talked about in the actual real nuggets of disclosure that we do get are the things they don't want humanity to know about. A possible impending destruction, Antichrist figures, Satan himself appearing at the end of the world, the fulfillment of biblical and ancient prophecy. You can see why these black magic spiritists would not want these things to be disclosed.